The unfortunate thing to begin class is I'm going to have to be a little less kind. There we go. I'm going to kind of walk you through research for this paper. There's a significant research component. At the end of class, we're going to do some brainstorming. My whole point, before we go on break, and it's weird to call it a break because it's only 2 days, and for this class, it's not a break. But, I want to leave you with a pretty firm idea, at worst, about what we're supposed to do and what you think you might do. All right, that's my goal for today. Anyway, to begin with, what I want to do, I'm going to walk you through the approach I always take is like, Bailey, sweet. The approach I always like to take is, if I were in this class, what might I do? How might I go about it? So let's do that. To begin with, I also purposely kind of tried to pick a text that none of you would pick. And what I alighted upon was, honestly, what is widely considered to be one of the first instances of cancel culture, outrage culture. The first person who screwed up in such a major way that it went viral, basically, which is fun. So, to illustrate that for you, I have a bit of an experiment, and it could blow up in my face, but I'm kind of curious what happens. Yeah, so all I did was search. I guess I'll make it bigger so you guys can see that. Africa tweet. I just searched for that. And yeah, that's her name, Justine Sacco. It happened in 2013. She messed up real bad. But still, if you Google Africa tweet in 2022, she's the first result. So needless to say, it did not go well for her, the thing that she did. Of course, let's start with what she did.
That's the one I did.
That's the what?
That's the one I did.
You know this person?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my God.
I think she's a little older than me. That would be weird.
I'm just kidding.
All right, here's her tweet.
What the
Oh.
It's pretty rough.
Oh
It's
my
pretty
God.
rough. Hey, we're all agreed. I'm pretty sure we're all on the same page in regards to that tweet. Not the best idea from this person. And look, the little bit, the reaction you guys just had, the internet had the same reaction. Okay? Now, when it comes to, just to remind you what we're trying to do, when it comes to talking about what we do with this paper, what we're not trying to do, and this is actually, I pat myself on the back, I think a great example. All of us would read that and go, Jesus Christ. But that's not the argument we're making, right? Number one, because that's the argument anybody would make,
Right.
for anybody you would want to know. So it's not worth making, but also that's not what the assignment is, right? The assignment is, given what she did, what was the response? And then what argument can we make about us as a people, a society, a culture, about that response, okay? So this is where research comes in. This is where you have to look into, how did people feel about that? Not good, but we need to get more specific than that.
Oh, she's British, thank God.
So, yeah, I suppose there's that. Let's see. All right, I'll make it a little smaller so I can navigate it. I searched for this. I'm going to do well, why? What the hell? Are you kidding me?
Mouse broken.
I mean, there we go. All right.
16, she has more?
All right, so the other thing you can do, the other point I want to make really quickly, how Google can be your friend in this instance. If you remember something about a person or an event that occurred, but you can't remember too many specifics, you can just mess around on Google. I looked up Africa tweet. Africa is kind of a continent.
Kind of, yeah.
I'm sure there's all kinds of tweets related to it, but that got us to her. So now I'm going to look up her name, and that'll give us probably slightly more specific results. Okay. So, the other thing I want to talk about. The way we can apply our past discussions to this one. There's kind of two ways, but the first I want you to consider rhetorical analysis, critique, all that business of what is the text after, what is its goal, how is it trying to accomplish that goal, and is it viable? Is it a useful source? We're still going to use that here. The difference is, rather than simply saying this text does a good idea or it doesn't, our job is to first do that, but then if it does a good job, maybe we use it for our own argument, okay? We have all kinds of examples here. Just like reading a book by its cover type of stuff. I mean, there's her Twitter account. I don't know how useful that would be now because we're talking about 2013. Up at the top, you got something from the New York Times. That could be interesting. You have something from the Sun, which is a little bit kind of tabloidy, but you know, we could think about that. LinkedIn, we're not interested in her LinkedIn account either. BuzzFeed, which you guys might scoff at, but we're going to come back to it. Washington Post, Fox, Rolling Stone. These are all major publications. Any of them, I think, could be useful just from a credibility standpoint, right? After that, you can look at the titles. Sometimes titles can tell you a lot. Why we should forgive infamous tweeter Justine Sacco. That's interesting, especially considering the response that you guys had. This guy's like, we should, she's had enough. It seems like that title indicates, right? So I'm actually going to open that in another tab just to consider. This one from Vox sounds like maybe the history of it, which could be useful, you know, because I don't remember all of it. It was 2013. I was your age. This one is interesting. So Twitter's outrage machine should be stopped. That is inherently an argument. That's worth us considering. But here at the end, you can tell it seems like it's going to turn, so I'll open that. This one I want to really highlight for you, actually. BuzzFeed News. It almost seems contradictory. However, if anybody is going to talk about Twitter, I feel like BuzzFeed is oddly equipped to do that, right? And I happen to know that this article is a play-by-play of the tweet and how it went viral, which is excellent. What I will also say, though, very quickly, we're going to talk about this article for a couple minutes. I don't know that an article like this would actually show up in your paper, but it can be useful just for you. Like if you were writing about this person, you're not going to remember all the specifics. You're not going to know everything. So just reading over something like this that gives you the background information helps you form a fuller picture for yourself. Does that make sense? So like it wouldn't be in your works cited page, but it would exist in your brain, basically. All right. So let's talk about this one for a couple minutes and what actually happened. And I mean it. It gives us the play-by-play. At 10:19 Eastern Time, this woman tweeted this, okay? And then she got on an 11-hour flight. She only had 200 followers, okay? Which is, I would imagine, similar numbers to some of you. Maybe you have more. Maybe you're more popular than her. Certainly now. But a reporter got hold of it. Somebody sent it to a reporter. He posted a thing about it. You scroll through, these are other people seeing it, reacting. Many of these people are also reporters because reporters are friends with each other. So they pick it up. They start talking about it. People see it as a result of that. It kind of starts snowballing. There's more reporters. I don't know what that is. All right, now people get pissed. And look, you guys have seen the internet before, so like none of this should be terribly surprising. They're calling for her job. Some of them are calling for her to have AIDS. And to be fair to the internet, I guess, it's going to be hyperbolic, right? Like I don't know most people when pressed if they would actually want her to get AIDS, okay? But the point is they're super angry. They want punishment. That seems to be the general response. A lot of that. Some people raise the idea, maybe she was hacked. That's kind of an insane thing to tweet, you know, from what to this point seems like a reasonable adult person. Maybe somebody's playing an awful prank on her, you know? So they wonder about that. More people pick it up. At this point, it's viral. At this point, it's officially viral. Everybody's talking about it. She's trending in South Africa, which is where she's going. Okay? Now, I have to explain this to you. This is specifically what I remember about this way back when, because in 2013, flights didn't have internet. So when she got on the plane to go, she was offline. She was not connected. So when it went viral while she was in the air. And so the hashtag has Justine landed yet. People started tracking her flight because they knew when she landed, at some point she would reconnect and she would learn that her life was different. Just below this, there's actually a map of all the places that hashtag was trending. Unsurprisingly, America, Europe, a smattering all through here, and then of course South Africa. They're pretty interested. So this is people talking about it some more, really having fun with, again, her life being over. Now businesses and other famous people get involved. They start tweeting about it, trying to sell things, which is always a different way to approach controversy, I suppose. That's pretty much what's going to happen when she lands.
Sorry, is that J-Law?
Some people try to do good work with it. Aid for Africa bought JustineSacco.com and set it up as a fundraiser.
That's awesome.
It is, but it's her name. Like a whole lot of things are happening to this woman, and she's going to learn about it. She's going to learn about it all at once. Now people are just having fun with using her name. For a couple days, she was more popular than Justin Bieber on Twitter, which should tell you something. Let me see. We got to be near the end here. More people talking about it. All right, these are all the places it was trending again. Oh, these are her mentions. Obviously. Oh, she gets fired. The next day, the company she worked for, they fired her. And then she landed that next morning. She apologizes to a paper. She can't apologize online because obviously she deletes all of her social media immediately. She catches a little bit of flack for not apologizing sooner, but of course I would point out she has to apologize to a newspaper, like very old school, because she deletes all of her social media. And that's where the article ends. So again, this article in particular, I don't think has much use in a paper. But if I wanted to write about her, now I have a much fuller picture of exactly what happened. They break it down by the hour. Like this is a huge timeline of events that I could really dig into if I wanted to. And I think that could help me when it comes to doing other research, what other things I might look up, given how people react, some of the language they use. Like I could look into any and all of this for my research. Okay. Now that said, I'm going to close this guy because we're not going to use it. All right. Some of these other sources. Oh, no one's going to pay for your. All right. This one makes an actual argument, so we're going to keep that up. This one is talking about how she got rehired, I guess, in 2018. So we might look at that. This one said, oh God. All right. This one says we should forgive her. Where's the date? 2015, so this would have been 2 years later. And I happen to know this guy, and it mentions here, he wrote a book about public shaming, so that's interesting. Is there anything else we want? There's this one from The Sun. I don't know, there's one from the New York Times. Actually, I kind of wonder about the Times. That's the same guy, also from 2015, so that might be interesting. We'll look at that. And again, you would kind of just mess around. As you read articles, they will bring up other ideas. You'll learn certain pieces of information. You can expand your search, make it more specific in some ways. It really just depends. The point I'm trying to make to you here is some of these are more useful than others, but all of them will be useful in some way. The real dividing line has to be what's going to be in my paper and what's not. What might I actually quote, for instance? Last couple things I would point out to you. Let me see. Is this this is a long article. I'm going to skim through a lot of it. Anything like this that brings up an event like this, you can guarantee the first couple paragraphs at least are going to be background information, and we just went over all that. So you can skim as you know, be like, all right, I know all this, lose all that. That's some art somebody did. I don't know why. Let me see. Okay, so this is some reaction, right? I guess. Or maybe, it's a different person that was shamed, I guess. So I don't know if that's useful to us or not, right? Just kind of look around. This is him meeting Justine Sacco. Now here's what's interesting. He talks about her apology. She issued an apology much later where she expanded upon what she thought she was trying to say. And he's meeting with her years later, and she kind of touches upon that. So she says, and here's what I want to bring to your attention, because this is interesting. To quote her, "Only an insane person would think that white people don't get AIDS." Given what she tweeted, it's like, but you said the thing about the AIDS and the being white. What happened? Her apology, basically, after the newspaper, after, I guess, things had blown over a little bit, she claimed that, given that she only had 200 followers who knew her, much better than the internet would, she claimed she was trying to be ironic. And I have to explain this, because not everybody fully gets what that means. Basically, if you think about a show like South Park, or I don't know what you guys watch, I want to be totally honest. But the way irony works, The Onion, if anybody is familiar with The Onion, so many times you'll see, unfortunately, an older person post an Onion headline and say, "Can you believe," like they don't understand that it's a joke. In general, irony is such that you make a joke and it's so insane, like it's so over the top that everyone understands you're joking. Do you see what I mean? She's claiming she thought that was the case when she said this wild thing, and that rather than making fun of Africa or AIDS or any of that, she's making fun of the kind of person who would take that joke seriously. Like who would say that in a racist way. She was trying to make fun of that. Which I will allow is possible. It's possible she meant that. Especially when she says it was for her, she only thought people she knew would see it. Like she had no idea it would go viral. It's possible. I'm curious what you guys think about that. About any of it at all.
I think that's fair.
Why? Like we need to have a brief conversation about it.
Because it seems like the kind of thing that you could jokingly say with your friends in real life, and obviously there's not a direct transitive property to putting that publicly online, and that was probably the actual big mistake that she made was making.
Yeah, well, and it's hard to get our heads around this now, but 2013 is obviously a very different time, but on Twitter. There are other articles, I won't bore you with more of them. One of them makes the point, I think it's the one actually that says we shouldn't forgive her. It makes the point that it says what Maya said last time, she should have known better. She should have known that this could go viral. And it's like, who imagines what they say is gonna go viral? That doesn't, even now, which it's easier, it can't happen.
Yeah.
No one would just assume that you would only think people that know you would see it, right? That's kind of a given, I think. So that part of her argument, that she only thought people that knew her sense of humor, knew what she would mean by it, would see it, seems fair. The next question would be, and we can talk about whether or not she misses the mark, we can talk about whether or not she should say this thing at all, it should be, that's a slightly different conversation. But the idea she's trying to put forward that she thought what she said in her initial tweet was so crazy, so over the top, that there's no way anyone would think she meant it like at face value. What do you guys think?
So while I can appreciate that,
Yeah.
I think even from the beginning when everybody was like starting to get online and everything, because I remember getting told like as a kid that like whatever you put out there, like you are open to criticism. Because
Yeah.
in theory, everybody has a voice.
Well, but to be fair, when you were a kid, she was like 30 something.
Yeah,
So, like,
no. I'm just saying like the principle still applies though.
Yeah.
So while I personally think it's distasteful just to put online, but
Sure.
like do what you do in your own
Yeah.
life, like you are still open to that criticism
Yeah.
if people decide to take it seriously.
Well,
Now that is on other people if they want to go ahead and get offended, and not
Yeah.
just whatever. But
Well, but also, I mean, to define criticism in this case, it's losing your job,
yeah,
being a bit of a pariah. Like
Yeah.
a question that I think Oliver raises is like, what's the proper level of punishment? How long should it go on?
yeah, I think it definitely was a little extreme given. It was a distasteful joke, and
Yeah.
let's be real, 2013 was a much edgier time online, in general. But I think that what she experienced was like a little much
Yeah.
for an extended period of time. Now, take for granted, she did get her job back and everything.
She,
but
I mean,
it just,
I think it took a couple years. But
Yeah,
she
that-
ended up
yeah,
getting her
that's-
job back.
yeah,
Yeah. So I mean, being fired for a few, well, and especially, and again, we won't look at the article at the same time, but the one that says she shouldn't be, like, we have a problem with outrage culture, but don't make Justine Sacco the poster child is like the end of that headline. And they're saying she ended up getting her job back, she's fine now, which seems mostly true,
yeah,
but it's weird how we gloss over, again, as a people, society, and culture, like the 2-3 years, whatever it was, where she wasn't okay, right? Like that probably
Yeah.
really sucked. Like it's kind of, and it's not like it's an easy answer either. What is the proper amount of public scorn? If she should be fired, which I mean, personally, I would think that's a hell of a line to cross for somebody,
yeah.
but I don't know. It's like how long, or should she be able to get hired somewhere? Like it's super murky. But still, the question remains, like for that other article, that other position, they're kind of saying, no, fuck her forever, and it's like that's a response we have. That is a position that we have, and that brings me to the question we're actually trying to answer, right? What does that say about us as like a people, a society, a culture, right? That we do react this way. We do. You have the term now like Twitter jail or something, which is kind of nothing. But in a lot of cases that expands outward, right? Like it's not just online that you're sort of canceled. You can lose your job, which is honestly kind of a big deal for everybody. What does it mean that we do that? That's how we punish people, I guess. We can start there. What does it say about our values or our priorities? That's the route we go, I guess. We can try a different way. We'll start with an easy one. Why do you guys think people reacted the way they did initially to her tweet? Yeah.
They didn't know like how she is in person, I feel like.
For sure.
I think it's an interpersonal thing. You don't know someone in real life, you don't understand tone, inflection, how they're meant to say something.
Well, and just all the context around it, but tone is interesting, especially, I mean, think about, I would imagine at some point in your lives, most of you have had the issue where you're reading a tweet, or someone has texted you, someone you know, and you can't read the tone. You don't know, do they mean it this way, or is it, and it causes a problem, it causes confusion. Like that's a very real thing. Tone matters. And for instance, sure, the joke is not a great one, but if she was around people she knew, and there's definitely a way to say that would communicate that you're not saying it basically like my family talks around Thanksgiving, right? Like if you catch my meaning. So, but what does it say about us, I guess? Because it's fair. It's fair to say there's no way to have that information, for sure. What does it mean, though, that even acknowledging that, we kind of just go, well, I'm going to have a reaction anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're basically, is it fair to say, on some level, we know we don't have all the information, but we're going to have a response regardless? Well, what does that say about us and our relationship to that context?
We just want to make ourselves feel better than someone else, I think. And that's what it all comes back to, is like, by us putting her down for saying something stupid, it makes us feel better about ourselves, that like we're smarter than her. Like, oh, I wouldn't have done that.
Well, for sure on that day, yeah. Okay. I wonder if this works. Yeah. All right. So the beginning of one possible kind of argument, and again, we're in the realm now where we have several. It's this idea of, I want to get a little more. You say. And I put that part in brackets even though you said it. Because this actually means a thing all on its own, right? That could go in several directions. But you began to define it here. So we'll start with your whole idea. Make ourselves feel better than her. You say feel smarter. In what context? Like in what specific way? If you could define it for us.
It's like, I wouldn't have looked at that and gone, I'm gonna post this. So I'm gonna.
Why not?
Because I understand that other people can't read my tone online.
Ah, okay. So, trying to figure out how to best sum this up. So it's the idea of that missing context, right? And it kind of weirdly backdoors into that idea that she should have known better, that you were kind of talking about, that the other guy kind of talks about. Like, if we ever stop to think about it for even a second, we know how we engage with online material and thus mostly how other people do. And there is that lack of context. And because of that, because we know that, you would bring that to bear, which is to imply that she should have as well. Okay. That could be part of our argument. And again, I think it's fair to say that for the most part, we as people, a society, a culture, understand that we don't have that context. I'm still interested in, too, what it says about our relationship to that context. Like, I guess I'll put it this way, that we just kind of take it for granted now that we don't have it. Does that make sense? What do you guys think about that? Because it bums me out, but I don't want to give you my thoughts right now. I'm just curious. Well, especially with you guys, because as you put it, you guys kind of grew up with this. I did not. Social media was invented while I was alive. Like it was,
That was something that I was just going to point out, and obviously you and this gal didn't understand it, but I feel like whenever I put something online, I just assume that there's a chance that the worst possible interpretation of it is gonna be picked up and spread about or whatever. And the reason that I think about that is because if I put something out there, I can't handle the criticism and I get sad. And that's the reason so that's my rationale for it, but obviously it goes another way in this case wherein people can misinterpret what you're saying and find it really offensive, and that's the stuff that's going to get the most traction, is the really negative kind of.
It's so much easier now to go viral. You say some wild shit,
yeah,
your tweet's gonna blow up. That's just how it is.
Yeah. Controversy has your gravity about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I kind of wonder. You say you're worried about this, but to me it seems like these two things are related, right? If you don't have context, how much more likely does this become?
Right.
Right? And to that, I would say, and this is an honest question, I'm wondering. I mean, do you guys feel like this is more often the mode than not? Given this, or like, I guess to put it another way, do you feel like we're inclined as a people, society, and culture to give people the benefit of the doubt when we can?
No.
No.
I think, well, in different spaces, but online, it's almost always that people are going to jump to like a more negative interpretation of what somebody's saying, just because like that's what they're looking for, their own traction. You know, it's like somebody could say something totally like mundane or whatever and regular, but somebody's gonna come out and try to sack it for something because they're trying to further their own kind of internet clout, I guess is the best. Yeah. Make them feel better about themselves. There you go. That ties all the way
It's
back.
like how some people argue with invisible comments, you know what I mean? Like, that isn't the case in this one.
All right, so one argument we can make, and there are, again, several. We kind of started here, and that led us here. And then I was going to ask you, but you started to define it toward the end. You say because, you say people are trying to get their own traction. You also kind of give us the term that we have, which is like clout. We need to define that in a little more, formal terms. But your argument basically is that we as a society, due to this absence of context that we all understand we have, we're more often than not given to the worst possible interpretation. And then the end of your argument there is because it helps us in some way. I'm curious about this idea of traction and clout. Like, how would we define that a little bit better? Like, people react, people take what you say in the worst possible way because they're trying to help themselves
In an
somehow.
attempt to garner their own attention.
To gain attention.
Yeah.
So it's about attention economy.
Yeah.
Well, because it's like, it's one thing to be really popular because you said something shitty, but it's another thing to be really popular because you had like some really like, like really witty comment about somebody. Like, I'm sure the guy who started the hashtag, has Justine landed yet? Has probably thinks that they're like the greatest thing since sliced bread,
Yeah.
Because,
Well, I mean, you get into some of these concepts we have about like virtue signaling, is a little bit what you're talking about. Yeah, I mean that could be part of the discussion. Okay, I'll say that's one possibility for sure. For all the reasons that we gave. I would like to try a couple more if we can, but we may not be able to. I don't even know what time it is.
It's 10:05.
Outstanding. All right, so we got that one. Are there any other possible reasons that we kind of go to this worst possible interpretation more often than not? There are other arguments we can make, by the way, but I'm trying to. When you have the root of an argument like this, you can usually go other places. Why else do you think we do that? It could be about attention, but it could be about other things too. And it's helpful to remember as well the context. In this particular case, she made a super fucked up joke about Africa and AIDS and being white. Okay. Given that context, is there another reason to talk about why people, by and large, arrived at the worst possible interpretation? Do you think? Okay. I'm trying to think of another way to put it. It really underscores the silence. I mean, you're allowed.
No, I'm just trying to figure out a way that like doesn't come off really like left field. So like it's not in this case. I feel like people like obviously are entitled to be upset in this case, but I feel like sometimes in like general, some people are looking for things to be upset about, like looking for because it makes them. I think we already talked about making them feel better about themselves, but like just in general.
Yeah, well, what you're kind of getting at is, I mean, part of what you guys were dancing around before, I don't remember who said it, but somebody kind of made the point or implied it at least, given the subject matter. So ignoring for just a second that she meant it, according to her, ironically, okay? Given the subject matter of that irony, we could argue, as a people, society, and culture, we're more inclined to not see that irony. Do you see what I mean? Like, we're more inclined to just read it. And again, I like most people we saw in the BuzzFeed article, like, this fucking racist, like, we kind of just assume that's who she is, or that's what she's done. And again, I think it comes back to context. You would hope the people that know her you hope she's not like that, so you would hope they would know that. But without that context, it still leads us here. But now instead of garnering clout, which we define better, it's this idea that in this particular case, we're kind of saying there are certain conversations that we cannot have publicly with a lack of specificity or a lack of clarity, because irony is like a film over the top, right?
Yes.
If she came out instead and tweeted, man, people that, make jokes about Africa and AIDS and stuff, those are fucking terrible people. That would just be a statement, right? And it also wouldn't have gone viral, and it wouldn't have, but we're kind of saying, you cannot do the other thing. That says something about us, again, as a people, society, and culture, right? It's the same idea. I have to be very careful saying this. You'll hear comedians sometimes get in trouble for making like rape jokes, right? Well, and again, that reaction, right? Well, I have to be very careful with how I say this. There are different kinds. This is a fucked up sentence. Get ready for this. There are different kinds of rape jokes, right?
Yes.
There do exist, because that's how language works. Jokes, I suppose, I can't recall any, where people talk about rape and it's like, haha. But there must be, again, given how language works, jokes that have that as the subject matter, but that the rape itself is not the joke. You see what I mean? Like, but the issue is, feel how uncomfortable the room is right now. The issue is, you cannot have that discussion. You cannot invite the idea of a joke because of, I guess, how it might read given the subject matter. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, and again, that says something about us as a people, a society, and culture. Given the subject matter, there are certain things, to put it in the vernacular, that we do not fuck around about. We just do not. And there's some good things to say about that. Like, there's good reasons for that. But it is interesting, and it has to illuminate something about us that on some level we're like, nah, we're just not going to talk about that. We're not going to do that at all. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I spun off there for a second. I was on tiptoes a little bit. Okay. For just a moment, I want to entertain this other option. And if it goes nowhere, it kind of seems like it might. You guys are pretty quiet today. We'll do something else, okay? But I'm just curious. Other than worst possible interpretation, which is a fair argument to consider, it's a fair road to go down. Are there any other ideas you guys might have swirling around about, again, the initial response people had to that really fucked up tweet that she sent out? Like, why the world? It was the world. It was millions, maybe even 1 billion people, right? Tracking her flight. There were reporters when she landed, like, waiting for her. And she was like, what? Like, it was, why do we do that? Because at this point, I guess what I'm kind of getting at is, it's not even like that we don't like what she tweeted. That's how it started. By the end of it, I don't know how much that's involved, right? It's turned into something else. Does that make sense? It's like got its own momentum almost. It's an event. All these people tracking her flight, like, you're waiting. It's like the ball drop on New Year's Eve or something, right? Like, it's like that's weird. The hell is that? Why do we do that? I think we do that now in all kinds of contexts. We follow these conversations. I'm trying not to lead you guys too much. Yeah, I'm not gonna say that next thing. But why do you guys think we do that?
Sometimes people are just bored.
We can't just. All right,
I know.
I appreciate. Yes, but also, anytime you start with that tone and look, sometimes you're
No.
killing it, right?
No, yeah.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about boredom. If, as you've kind of hypothesized, people could be bored enough, and apparently they could, to track this stranger's flight, to follow the conversation online. It's an 11-hour flight, so like, you got a couple meals in between, right?
That's a lot. That's an eternity in the internet.
It's a long time. It's a long time. And apparently it was a red eye. She left at like 11 or whatever at night Eastern time and got there, 8:30 in the morning the next day. So there's, what is it to be that bored? Yeah.
I guess what I would have said is that maybe people just, it's more interesting than whatever they're doing at the moment. Like, it's more interesting than their lives that are going on right now.
Why is that, do you think?
I mean, even just having like read the tweet, you'll be like, that's pretty nuts. And
Pretty
you're
bold,
you're
yeah.
I wonder what people are saying about this, because like 10 minutes after it was posted, I'm sure the first kind of flack was starting to come down.
Yeah.
And then people are like, oh wow, this guy says this kind of thing. This other people. So then it's like, a case of like where the people's reactions are almost as entertaining as the thing happening itself.
So it's about entertainment then,
Yeah.
That's interesting. And I think that's what we were getting at with saying, like, if we're saying we're bored and this thing unbores us, we're saying it's entertaining. It's like reality TV.
Yeah.
But again, let's try to define what the entertainment is in this case. What's entertaining about it? What do we like? What would we keep checking in for? What makes us go, what keep scrolling? Like that kind of, what is that stuff, do you guys think? I ask, you guys exist on the internet, so like none of this should be super strange to you. What kinds of things do people post? What gets you interested? Like when you're scrolling through and you see the first thing, whatever it is, that gets you interested. Like what,
I think out of context memes, which like
it's a lot of memes, right?
yeah,
And they even had a couple in the article.
yeah.
Yeah. What is that?
Well, because you might happen upon that first, and you're like, where did this come from? And
Yeah.
you can-
Yeah.
There's a whole rabbit hole that sort of develops.
There is.
And it's just the ease that you can access, like, the information. It's like, you go to replies or retweets on that original, and then you can just
Yeah.
sit there and scroll through those, or you just keep clicking around, and you're finding all this different stuff, and it's like, the next little, like, hit of, haha, funny, they're insulting this entitled lady on the internet, like, I don't want to call her that, obviously,
No, but you're existing in the space that you're scrolling. Like that's
so
fine.
it's circuitous and easy to access all that.
Okay, so, but all right, so kind of to borrow a setup from here, due to the sort of onrush of information, whether it's memes or comments or what, like just it's a fire hose, right, of just stuff. So it's easy to get to, as you said. Due to that, sort of weird we're very much inclined to participate, but of course we went further and said we're entertained by that participation. And then you stopped yourself from using some language about like entitlement and like kind of laughing at this person because of that. But again, I don't know that you're wrong. Like you may feel like wrong now saying like, well, I don't know. And that's totally fair. But what we're thinking about, people in that mode, people in that moment, why do we do these things? You're kind of saying, I think, we're caricaturizing her, right? All she is, to get back to what we said over here, is that tweet.
Mhm.
That's all we know about her is she said this fucked up thing.
Yeah.
If you had somebody's like, hey, you want to meet my buddy? Well, like, well, you know, his name's Jeffrey. He says fucked up shit about Africa. You're like, no, I don't. Why are you friends? So due to that, I guess we have to change that even, like due to the, right? Because it's a lot of information, but it's all kind of the same, and it's all actually super limited in scope. We're very much inclined to participate, and what you're ultimately getting at, now I'm not in love with my phrasing here, but again, we're drafting in real time. We're basically saying, we take that, but we do that, right? We do kind of form, to say a person is entitled, you would hope you'd get to know them a little better, right? Like, but the internet doesn't do it, it does not allow for that usually.
Right.
But we're kind of beginning to argue that we're conditioned to not bother. I saw the one tweet, I've seen what I need to see, she's a terrible fucking person. That's kind of what that other article says at one point. She did say a really messed up thing. Whether or not she meant it a different way, you can disregard if you want, like that's for sure an option. And the guy was like, fuck her. And I was like, maybe. Like that is an option. But it's also potentially the worst thing she's ever said. I say fucked up things all the time, at home. Mostly because it messes with my wife. But if I'd ever done that online, I mean, I don't know, right? If that's all people had of you to form an opinion of you, I think it would go like this. But another argument that's kind of related to that one that we're saying is that I do think we do that. We don't mean to, but we kind of cherry pick whatever's going viral, and that's who you are now. Yeah, so much so that in 2022, almost 10 years later, if you Google Africa tweet, it's her. It's her for days. That's who she is. That's always who she's going to be. So that's fun. All right, let's do something else. Well, I should ask, it's going to take me a second to erase all this. Does anybody have any other thoughts or questions about what we're trying to do in the paper? Anything at all? Well, just watch me quietly, I guess.
Wait, I have a question.
Ah, there it is. Go for it.
What if I want to like change my person?
That's fine.
Because my person, like, they've been canceled for a bunch of stuff.
Well, you know what? We're going to start with you because the next thing we're going to do is a little bit of brainstorming. I'm very curious who that might be.
Yeah, that's what they say. I saw that. I'm doing.
But I will say, to answer your initial question, as I said at the top of class, the two things I want you leaving today with is at least a decent understanding of the paper, and I hope we've started to do that, and some idea of what you might focus on. And you can figure, we haven't started writing anything. You can change. Yeah, that's totally fine. That said, we all have to know whoever this person is that you're not going to write about now.
I don't know if y'all know, but Trisha Paytas.
I don't know if you know who you're.
She's so funny.
Trisha Paytas, T-R-I.
She's like
S-H-A.
She's like if the word moronic was a real person.
P-A-Y.
She's just like bipolar. She's just like schizophrenic.
Oh yeah.
She just posts whatever.
Okay, well, all right, hold slow down. I don't know who this is.
Oh my god. It's just like one of the most entertaining people.
Okay.
In the like most fucked up way.
She probably had like the most influence on like YouTube as a whole.
Her, Shane Dawson.
Yeah, like they.
Oh my
shaped-
All
god.
right, everybody chill out.
No.
Changed the N to an S.
Huh?
Paytas.
Oh,
It
Okay.
doesn't really matter, but.
all right. That's interesting.
Like,
What? So what? Hold on, what is her? She's a YouTube channel. Is apparently what is that?
it's
Oh,
just
honey.
her like having breakdowns on her kitchen floor, like literally. It's like, am I wrong though?
Is that
There was a
mukbang?
rumor. There was a rumor going around that she was gonna name her. She gave birth on the day Queen Elizabeth died. There was a rumor going around that she was going to name her child Elizabeth after the late Queen. Like, she just.
And then she named it
She's
Malibu
been
Barbie.
very racist.
Named
She's
it what?
been
Malibu Barbie.
Yeah, she named it. Yeah, she said like some really like racist stuff. That's just like.
Okay. But so she's a vlogger.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Kind of.
She has a really
It's
weird
weird.
genre.
Well, look, I'm trying to understand really quick. But like for instance, there are people online who I may or may not be. I don't care. But they have a thing they do. Like my wife is really into true crime. She listens
Yeah.
to really messed up stuff on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
Where people but that's what they do, right? It's a
Yeah.
true crime
Yeah.
podcast on YouTube. Okay.
No, she's just fucked up.
She's just a person who vlogs her life online.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it happens to be incendiary.
Sure.
Incendiary means like fire.
No, yeah.
Like really
Yeah. It's
controversial.
like, she's like, dumb. Like, I
Well-
don't want to say she's
It's-
dumb.
No,
but
she's,
like,
Although-
she's actually
bipolar, like,
insanely
mentally ill.
unintelligent.
Well,
Yeah.
all right. So
At least the way that she presents herself are like my last two brain cells rubbing together.
to
It's
bring it
nice.
to bring it back to your initial concern,
Yeah.
you wanted to write about it, but then you say you didn't.
Yeah.
Why? If you could just briefly.
Because I feel like the examples you're giving, it's about like people that are canceled for one specific thing.
Well, you could pick a thing.
Yeah.
That's part of what I was going to say today. Like, look, some of the examples I could think of, and we operate in very different orbits. Okay? I mean, actually, I would not want you to write about either one of these people for similar reasons. But like Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, they did some things.
Yeah.
But they've also actually been canceled now. Like they're in
Yeah.
jail.
Yeah,
so
they're
it's
like criminals.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it's different. But Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, for decades, did really messed up stuff, and it would be hard to pick one, you know. But even in this person's case, if you wanted to, it sounds like it would be kind of easy to pick one or two, whatever. But yeah, you would have to. When it came to your research, you would have to try to silo it into how did people respond to this, you know, one or two things she did. I've heard people in the past, it sounds at least a little bit similar, the Paul brothers.
Yeah.
They had antics, right? But you will get people responding to that in different ways, which is interesting. So I don't know this person, but how it usually goes is you'll have a lot of people who say, on the best day, this person is ridiculous, right? And on the worst, like super problematic, okay? But you'll have other people who are fans who would gladly defend them, might even espouse some of their views. And so the fact that we have a whole conversation around whoever that person is interesting. And it probably does say a whole lot about us, probably something pretty troubling. So you could, but I totally share your concern of like, maybe it's too much. That's a fair thing. If you don't feel like you can wade through all and like pick one or two things, then yeah, probably go with somebody else. But you could also probably do that person. You got time to think on it. Great first example, apparently, because you guys all knew who that was. Other ideas. These are just ideas, by the way.
Yeah, I'm gonna do Gabby Hanna in her most manic episode. Or
You
most
guys gotta slow
recent.
down when you say these people I've never heard
Okay.
of.
G-A-B-B-I-E.
Wait, Phoebe?
No, B-B-I-E.
Irrelevant.
Gabby.
irrelevant.
Anyway, Hannah.
Gabby.
H-A-N-A.
There you go. Yep. It's like Hannah Montana.
Phoebe?
No.
No, G-A-B-B-I-E. That's what I was. No, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's a name.
Don't put the wow. That's what she means.
Yeah.
Wait,
No,
you should say things very quickly about people I've never heard of.
that's fine.
Alright.
So basically,
Slower.
she was an internet personality that blew up in like early 2010 for like, you know, story times and stuff on YouTube. But
Okay.
she quickly turned into like a vlog channel, and then
Yeah.
like her bipolar got like exponentially worse
Okay.
recently, and she had a manic episode where she was like posting over 100 TikToks in a day.
Yeah.
and said some really problematic shit. Like,
Okay.
she was
Well-
talking about how she's a person of color when she's from not. Yeah, she's white as fuck.
Well, but no, here's my question. All right, so
It's got this ugly-
this is interesting. I mean, mostly
Yeah.
because to tie it sounds bananas, right?
Yeah.
Yes. But is she diagnosed?
Yeah.
Or-
She has talked about it. She also accused someone of like breaking into her house,
yeah.
which like there's murky lines on that one, but basically the internet was
Well,
like,
but we have a weird relation. Like, I would imagine, and again, I don't know, but like the response to all this is probably not awesome,
yeah.
right? Isn't it? Like Justine Sacco, I didn't actually say this. She was a PR executive.
Yeah.
Oh, that's ironic.
So yeah, part of the deal with all of that, with like she should have known better, is like, if anybody's gonna know at least a little bit better, it would be somebody you would think. But in this person's case, I mean, can she really help it?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
I think there was
discuss.
more
It's
like-
kind of
There's
yeah.
more concern than there was outrage.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
happened.
Um,
Okay.
It was everyone was sympathetic to her situation.
Not
It
everyone.
wasn't
There
like-
were still some heated comments that were like,
Yeah.
But it was mostly like overall the tone. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't get into it, but what I heard from it was sympathetic and being like she needs help.
There were a lot of wellness checks.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot
Well,
of wellness.
so in that particular case, what's interesting is, and again, there's all kinds of ways you can, but it
Yeah.
seems like while there is always going to be some people who are just like, fuck that person, you know, and then that's worth thinking about. It is interesting in 2022. Is it current? You talking
Mhm.
about? If we're talking about ourselves as a people, society, and culture, we're in a place now where we want to try to help people, even if it's an individual who says things we very much disagree with. You know, I mean, again, I don't know any specifics about the
That's
person,
fine.
but that may be the particular avenue for that particular person.
Yeah, it was just super interesting because I've never seen like a community react the way that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
it's kind of compelling because it's like, you know, anybody can be like kind of crazy online and be criticized for it or whatever, but
Yeah.
the point at which it starts to transition into like, this is
like
clearly
actually
indicative-
crazy, as opposed to colloquially.
Yeah,
Yeah.
indicative of somebody who like has some kind of issue that needs to be addressed. You kind of retroactively look back at all this stuff, you're like, oh, like there's been signs all along that we just like haven't noticed because there's only now started a pile up.
yeah, it's stuff like that. And she's been canceled several times before.
Were
but-
you raising your hand because you need to go?
No.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
I was just gonna tell you that I changed the tape.
Okay, we'll come. All right, we'll come back to you. We'll finish this person, and then I've heard of that person, but
I'm raising my hand because I need to go.
Yeah, can we go?
I'm not, I have to go get something from my room and my next class starts like 15 minutes after this one.
you gotta do what you gotta do.
Okay. Just leave.
Okay.
I was really enjoying myself though.
All right, it's all good. All right.
Like kids.
Bye.
So I know a little bit about this guy. I don't know a lot, but I've heard his name. Let's talk about that guy. What's the deal with him?
Oh my god. Please tell me you've seen the memes. Please tell me.
He's a what?
He's like a kickboxer. Kickboxer.
Kickboxer. Okay.
Yeah, he's like.
I love
But
it.
he's an online persona.
Sure, well, not anymore.
He has this thing. No, he has this thing. What was it?
You got
He would
Yes.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, Hustlers University.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then didn't he move to like, where was it? Romania
Yeah,
to
yeah.
escape like assault charges.
yeah, but then he's sex trafficked in Romania.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's fucked up.
Yeah.
It's a
Didn't he
fucked
say
up
something about
situation.
like vulnerable objects or something? It was like.
And then
Yeah,
he-
all the misogyny.
Yeah.
Well, so here's I've heard very little about the person.
Oh wow, this
Really?
is a big thing to jump into.
When I'm online, it's football Twitter and
Cats
Well, like
for your
cats
wife.
and a little bit of history. Yeah.
when he was a big deal. Like, what happened? He went on Joe Rogan. I
Yeah,
think.
as I say, we went on a
Yeah.
Rogan podcast.
Yes.
And I think that was like the point where he said some like really messed up shit, and then he was like, but it was just in theory, guys.
He was talking
He was
about-
trying to
the
defend himself.
sickening part was that all these men were agreeing with him.
Yeah.
And he said like all these things about
It was
Yeah.
I was like, bro.
All right. So the little bit of conversation I've heard, very little. It kind of skimmed across a lot of weird
Yeah.
But it's been other people wondering whether or not he's playing a character, which which is interesting.
Yeah.
Now, again, I would hope at least, and we'll come to the cesspool that is the internet and people that agree with this guy. But it is possible. It's for sure possible outside of like legal shit that he's playing a character. And again, this gets us back to the Sacco idea. Like one way to talk about irony, the way she's talking about it, she is saying that she's tweeting that joke as a character that she's making fun of, right? And the ideas I've heard thrown around is that this guy is so over the top that it almost would have to be a persona, right? Which is possible, given what you guys say.
The only reason why I wouldn't say it's not a persona is because, like,
Yeah.
in the instance of Justine, she just said something on the internet.
Yeah.
Andrew Tate has, like, done things.
Yeah,
There's, like, evidence
numerous-
against
Well, no,
him.
I just said once
Yeah.
the people I was listening to were saying, like, basically what you said is, but as soon as it got into different legal stuff, and then it's like, well, now the conversation is kind of different. But you think too, and here's the interesting, there's all kinds of angles you can take.
Basically, the internet.
Supposing it's a persona or not, the fact that it got him this following,
I
right?
don't think so.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And you say like there's a lot of like gross people that maybe agree or whatever, like that it has financial power, right? To be this way, and it's like fucking why, right? Trying to answer that question again says a whole lot about us as a people, society, a culture. We can entertain it for a second if you guys want, but again, I can't help very much because I don't know a lot about this guy. I know other things. Do you guys think? Why do you think he has the character he is has so much financial viability?
It's hard because, like, I do know that he has made some, like, honestly valid points. Like, he has had good discussion in the past, and so it's a hard thing to, like,
But
where's the line of when he starts playing this character and what is he
Yeah.
actually talking?
Yeah.
It's all so blurred, and I know some of it is just, like, hyperbole when he's speaking.
To stop you really quickly, which is I have to be very careful because we're talking about a misogynist, and I just cut off a woman. But
at least you're self-aware.
well, what's interesting too, the point you kind of raise here is it's even, you could write a paper on where does the person and the character begin. Like the fact that now, more than ever, I would argue, we don't really know, right? Is worth investigating. Like, I mean, it's kind of what I'm grappling with too, is like, because I know very little, but even based on what I know, I could easily see where like he's playing a douchebag, like, and it sounds like doing a great job. But it's almost like in 2022, we're so comfortable with that blurriness, generally, right? Like no one's even really worried about whether or not he means it. Like, is weird.
I was just about to say controversy sells.
It does.
And because he has gotten kicked off of almost every social media platform.
Well, and if you wanted to be, if you could be sociopathic enough to potentially play a character online that's that controversial, like wouldn't that be a great business plan?
Didn't Shane Dawson do like a whole series about like whether or not Jake Paul was a sociopath?
Well, no, and that was objectively garbage. That was hot.
But I
But-
think there was some good points in it.
But it's the fact that we buy it. We buy this stuff. We really do.
It just depends on how it is presented, though. I mean, I feel like just as like a critical viewer, like when Shane Dawson did his whole thing, and I know you probably, it's fine. Like, he brought in a really, quite frankly, shitty psychologist. Who's like, she's smart on paper, you know what I mean? Like, she has the degree, but like, in practice is objectively, like, but a lot of people don't take the time to like think about it and like dissect it almost.
Yeah. Well, no, and again, like this, the fact that we don't bother, the fact that we're not worried about it, says a whole lot about us.
Oh, yeah.
And all I'm trying to highlight here is that could be one avenue for a paper.
Mm-hmm.
Another avenue could be, as Liv brought up, the sort of underbelly where you get into like men's rights and that's a whole other paper. The fact that you have these movements of people, we often think of movements as positive things, and they often are, but not always. Nazis were a movement, you know, like and still are, I guess. Fucking my point. I guess I'm just saying you have all kinds of different options. It depends what angle you want to take into the text, right? Depending on what it is. Let's do a couple more. I'll stop writing because we were just talking about them. But anybody else you guys can think of, or maybe this conversation has sparked somebody for you.
I mean, we could talk about Shane Dawson.
Yeah, Shane Dawson's another
Shane
big-
Dawson is
Yeah.
another like YouTube person, I guess.
Yeah, yeah,
He's
yeah.
friends with Trisha Paytas, or was
Yeah, well, no,
it?
it was.
Okay.
Like they made content together. So
Okay.
they're in that same genre,
Similar.
like just
Yeah.
outrageous.
Random
They are
shit.
so over the top in their persona that they display online.
Yeah.
You don't have any good sense of what they really are like.
Yeah, well, and again, but it's so the way my brain works, I'm immediately interested in like, why are we so drawn to caricature, right? Like, why is
Yeah.
that what works for us now? Because it does.
I think it's because it's direct.
Yeah.
Like when you are playing a character that is so over the top,
Yeah.
it's a direct point that you're making. Whatever you say, like
I think his case is particularly interesting though
Yeah.
because of like when he was making fun of Aunt Jemima, calling her yeah.
Well, it's
Like
I know, but real quick, to bring it back to what you said much earlier, it's also, I can't help but wonder how much it might have to do with our recognition as a society that we lack all this context. And we were talking about Twitter before, but if we're given to caricaturize people, which we argued earlier we are, maybe when we see it, we're like, yeah, we don't have to worry about that person as a person. We can just say, I know exactly who you are based upon very little information, because that's all you're ever going to give me. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
and it's like, especially with Twitter, if like you see a tweet from somebody,
Yeah.
you're never gonna see another tweet from that same person ever again unless they're
Ye-
famous, you know?
Yeah, unless you
So
follow
it's like,
or something. Yeah.
so it's like, yeah, it's like if I say something mean under her tweet, I mean, what's the chance that's gonna come back to bite me in the ass?
Yeah. Well, I mean, somebody will perhaps respond.
Yeah.
I cut you off, by the way.
Oh no, you're good. I forgot what I was saying anyway. But we were talking about what the Aunt Jemima whole
Sean Dawson.
the whole slur thing.
Yeah, he was,
It's just
he was known for like doing
Yeah,
blackface in his early career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the level of. I think it's just because like
And
it
he's-
wasn't even funny.
It wasn't.
Like
And I think he
But it's
got
the shock
famous.
value.
yeah,
he got
that's what I
famous
was trying to
so
get
much
at is the
value.
shock value.
Yeah.
And well, that's not.
It's not new, but
no,
like
Alice Cooper still has a
Oh.
concern about it.
yeah, but
Ozzy Osbourne bit the head off of a bird.
no, it was a bat.
Bat, sorry. Yeah. But anyway, okay.
No, but it's the shock value. I think is what we are interested in.
It is.
That is what I was getting.
And now it's saying, like, at least Ozzy Osbourne and Alice Cooper's case, I'm not a fan myself, but
Yeah.
they have music, right? They have another thing. It seems like you guys are saying this person only has shock.
For his early career, like basically
Yeah.
from like 2011 to like up until like 2016.
No, it was like 2008, I want to say.
Okay,
You guys
2008 to like 2016.
I was just in college. I don't know when you guys were.
We were growing up with this.
I know.
Like
Yeah.
the thing, like I
Yeah.
don't know, like his content changed drastically after he stopped being friends inherently with people like Trisha Paytas and Garrett Watts. Like,
Yeah.
Well, I got Garrett Watts. That's a whole different
Trisha
topic. Yeah.
and like who else?
What was it?
Jeffree
My
Star.
Cole, whatever his
Oh,
name was. Drew Monson.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. He was just friend. Like
Drew is so wholesome though.
there was a very like set group of extremely problematic YouTubers that all
Okay.
made content together,
Yeah.
and that was like a very
Yeah.
essential part of like the internet when I grew
Well,
up.
that's
Yeah.
kind of yeah.
That was like the foundation of YouTube almost.
It's interesting that that's a genre. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, real quick. We only have a couple minutes left. Some of you have noticed. Is there anyone outside of this genre you guys can think of? I just want to give you some options. I want to try to drum up just ideas for you before you go.
I wrote about Kanye West
What's interesting about him?
and his, how he's involved with drama all the time.
Well, and it kind of like we were worried about earlier. You have to pick, right? And it's before last semester. I hadn't taught this class in a couple of years for some reason. I had people write about Kanye West before, and what's interesting to me now is I still do, but it's totally new stuff. because he keeps
I mean,
doing these
what's
things.
it called? Have you heard about him wearing that White Lives Matter t-shirt at the
No.
fashion show? Well, that's recent.
That's
What's up?
Is this the?
Not yet.
Yeah?
nope.
Sorry, wrong.
You're
one.
good. Anyway, that's a hell of a thing to do. With somebody like that, there's all kinds of possible conversation. Sometimes around mental health, which people have raised about him. Other times, is he just courting controversy? Because especially with that, that's pretty. Like it feels like you're intentionally trying to go viral or something, right?
He's
Like,
just seeking attention.
well, that's what, yeah.
For president, did he not?
It's
Well-
the same shit with the Kardashians. Like, they're business people.
Well, yeah, but
Controversy
again,
sells.
it's. I'm not even necessarily trying to knock these people, and then I'll let you
Yeah.
go, okay? But it is. I would say they're a symptom rather than the illness, right? Like
Yeah.
when I say what does it say about us as a people, society, and culture, the Kardashians are billionaires
Yeah.
based on what?
Kim sex tape.
Well, that's how.
I mean, they're
Hey.
they're power lawyers though.
How does she?
But I'm just saying, what really made them rich and famous was all of us going,
Wow, they're rich.
like, that's kind of it. So that says something about us.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do in the paper.
Yeah.
Okay, very, very quickly, then I'll let you go. Do next time, paper proposals. Over the weekend, if you have to think about it a little bit, it's perfectly fine, okay? But on course then, before we come in next time, try to give me a little bit of a write-up about your person or your thing, whatever it is, how they screwed up. Try to be specific, okay? You can give me a general breakdown first if you feel it necessary, but what are you gonna focus on? And then of course, what was the response to that? And to the best of your ability, what kind of argument might you try to make at this very early stage? Okay? None of this is in stone, none of this has to be superb, okay? But this is just trying to get the paper kind of going. That's for next time. Also, as a reminder, if you want to turn in revisions, they're due tonight by midnight for which paper? One?
Rhetorical analysis.
Yeah, paper one. Oh yeah, 'cause I'm still grading paper two. So if you want to turn those in, turnin.com, scroll to the bottom, do that. I think many of you should. I think it would benefit you. That's up to you. Other than that, I'll see you next week. Thank you.